Yeah. Hi, good morning. So let's begin the session now. Okay. So in our yesterday session, we started understanding about REST API or REST services. So what is the meaning of REST services or how REST services came into the picture? The history, the background details we discussed. So here it's all about REST services is a concept part of web services. Web services is nothing but you are enabling an integration or communication between web applications. Nothing but communication between sharing information from one application to another application. So it's called as communication. So whenever you want to contract, whenever you want to make sure exchanging data or information from one application to another application, that is we will do only via web services concept. So we have soap web services at one point of time, but it is completely built on XML point of view. So it's completely XML encoding decoding point of XML language protocol point of view it is implemented. So there is a process there is. So when it comes to this soap services implementation, to make sure communication between one application to another application, there are some challenges available with respect to data with respect to development, as well as it is very performance wise it is having some less performance. It is to give always lower performance. So to overcome all these problems, people started identifying the solution. Then they came up with a concept called as REST services. So in this case, REST services is not a protocol built on any different protocol. So REST is all about what we are doing on daily basis. Like for example, servlets or what we did in the last week on the MVC module level, right? So servlets point of view. So they simplified the process of servlets implementation only. Simply, I can say like that. So they came up with a different architecture style on top of HTTP protocol, and they are calling it as a REST services. And what is a representational? What is a state transfer? And all I'll explain you. Okay, so you will understand later, step by step. You cannot understand this terminology. What you are transferring, what is the meaning of state, we will understand. So then people started using REST services because it's a very lightweight, nothing but it is giving huge performance when comparing with the SOAP, as well as with respect to development also. It's very easy approach to comparing with the SOAP approach. It's reducing a lot of other third party things like XML encoding, decoding, messaging formats, creating XML files with respect to communication between one service to another service, one application to another application. You have to depend on the XML file point of view. To exchange the data itself, you have to use XML protocol or some XML files and all you have to use. But here they avoided that XML concept 100%. So without XML knowledge, without XML itself, we can make services getting implemented so that we can start communicating from one service to another service or one application to another application. So here again, REST services supporting two data formats. So that means yesterday I told you, for example, now application 1 would like to send this information to, like, first name and last name of persons information. I want to send it from one application to another application. Then if you are sending in the XML, you can send in XML format, you can send in the JSON format also. You can send in the JSON format also. So what is a JSON? How, what is the rules and regulations of the JSON also we'll try to understand. So similarly, I told you already, REST APIs nowadays mostly primarily everybody is implementing with the JSON data format only. So it's a very much lightweight when comparing with XML. Syntax wise also it's very easy to understand. It's just like a text format when it comes to the tags format. And it is very much compatibility with our front end technologies also. And over the network also, I said yesterday, over the network also, whenever you are transferring data in between one application to another application, so JSON is always going to take very less amount of consumption, memory consumption. That's why obviously performance will come more. Due to these reasons, people will consider always JSON. So my suggestion here it is, I mean, not my suggestion. Now we are going to start understanding everything in the REST API point of view only. So we'll see all the details, how we are going to do and all everything. So please practice every day, and every detail is available as part of the material also. So I think if you go through the material, so whatever I shared earlier, I think whatever you downloaded, that's the only thing. So if any updates are there, then I will upload on the, I will update, I will share you on the WhatsApp, but as of now, same thing. So I provided all the details with respect to C. I explained you this controller view model. So please remember all these flow diagrams, guys. Okay, it's very important. In interviews, they will ask you, and as well as you should know what's happening internally also. So this is having all the information, how to create your applications. Why I'm showing this document is tomorrow, once you are done with our training, and maybe I may not connect to you, right? So then if you want to restart your practice one by time, so then this may help you, because I'm giving all the details like what you have to do and all. So you just remember all these diagrams I prepared for use for ourselves only. So see, this is what we discussed in the last week. I collected all the diagrams and I just put as part of the things what's happening and all handler mapping. So this is what I explained you, handler mappings and all these things. Okay. So please try to go through the theory point of view, what's happening, what is each and every annotation. I provided all the details. So just kickstart your practice and try to understand this REST APIs also very well. And it contains all the details. I explained each and everything. And anyway, we will cover everything again as part of our training also. Okay, so just I given very clearly what and all you have to take care. So why I'm saying is, that's what, for your future reference, just keep this document, and if you want to feel anything, and still if you are not getting something else, try to approach the Google or ChatGPT and get the information and try to pull or push your training. So your practice, not training. Okay. So such a way, just go take care of it. So here you can refer this for theory point of view, and something for practical point of view, you have to do all the things. Okay. So please kickstart your practice. That's what. Okay, let's come back to the REST services implementation now. So that means now finally what we are going to do here it is, we are going to create a REST services. So that means, okay, let's leave about, first of all, I said yesterday, one application communicated with another application. So is all about web services, via web services, and out of web services we decided like REST services, right? Now, in this case, when it comes to the front end and back end point of view, first we will talk about this approach. So I'm implementing, assume, for example, you are implementing a Swiggy application or Flipkart application, whatever it is. Now this is Swiggy front end and this is Swiggy back end. Okay, so overall it is a Swiggy application. So Swiggy, assume they are using some React, for example, I'm telling you, I'm not sure. And backend they are using Java and associated frameworks like Spring Boot. Assume like simply Spring Boot. Now this is the technology stack trace they taken as part of the Swiggy. I mean, we are also implementing same Swiggy like that feeling. We can feel. So now it is what a Swiggy application. So whatever the Swiggy applications we are seeing every day, this is what is Swiggy. This is how this is implemented. Now here, front end is implemented as a separate application and back end is implemented as a separate application. So that means this logic is running on a separate location, separate server, separate way, and this is logic is going to run on separate. So we are making communication in between these two via REST services. So what we are doing in this case, we are involving REST API. So now, as a Spring Boot developer, what we have to do here, guys, we have to, based on the requirement, by communicating with front end team or whatever it is, we have to create the REST services. So who, as a backend developer, okay, or as a Spring Boot point of view, based on a requirement, what we have to do, we have to implement, okay, REST services. We have to implement REST services. REST services. Now, whatever the REST services we are implementing is nothing but creating. Okay, creating. Whatever the REST services we are implementing are nothing but created REST services. Now, what front end developers will do is in general, okay, they will start. Okay, they will start means they will start coding, or they will do something like that. They will start calling or integrating. Any terminology is same thing. That's what people will use different terminology. Consuming. So I'll use this word consuming. This is the professional terminology in the API services point of view. I'll tell you what is the meaning of consuming. So now what front end team is doing in this scenario, they are calling or integrating or consuming the REST services or the REST API. So the REST API is whatever you implemented from the backend application. So that means in this overall approach, what you have to understand from these points is who, in this case, the REST services implementation is happening in the backend application. So here we are making the REST services got implemented REST API. Now this REST API, whatever you implemented, this is what called by the front end. They will start calling or integrating or consuming the REST APIs which are created by the backend application. Backend application. This is one approach. So in this case, I said yesterday, producer are producing, and consumer are consuming point of view. We have terminology in web services. What is the meaning of producer here? It is, so if you take in the producer terminology, okay, so what is the meaning of producer terminology here? It is an application. See, this, whatever the technology, whatever the concepts we are discussing yesterday and today, okay, irrespective of programming languages, tomorrow when you are looking into Python, .NET, front end, this concept is same, guys. This producer, consuming, web services, REST services, consuming, integrating, this terminology, this generalized terminology is common in every programming language. Okay, so this producer, consumer, this terminology you will see in the .NET Python point of view also. It's a standard. It's a common REST API is a common standard across all programming languages to implement the web application and communication. Okay, so what is a producer here? It is an application which produces. That means what? Created or implemented. Created or implemented. REST, or not only REST, web services. In simple, I can say web services are called as producer applications. Producer applications. So that means what I'm trying to say here, it is an application which created the REST services, an application which produces, created, implemented web services. So in this case, it's okay. We are going with finally REST. That's okay. So implemented the web services are called as producer applications. Now contradiction to that, vice versa point of view, what is a consumer will come? So an application, see, sometimes they'll ask you a question like, can you explain what is a producer, what is a consumer, how you are consuming REST services? They will not ask how you are communicating, how you are, okay, calling like that. They will ask simply like, can you explain how you are consuming REST services? So that then you should know this terminology. This is the professional terminology in the web services people will use. So now what I am calling as a consumer is an application which produces, no, which, an application which is calling or, okay, uh, or consuming. Generally, what is the meaning of consuming in our English dictionary meaning, guys? It's all about taking, right? What is the regular English meaning of dictionary meaning of producing? Okay, providing. So the regular English meaning is what producing means, you are something generating. Something you are generating. Consuming means something you are taking inside. Some producing means something you are creating and providing outside. So consuming means you are just taking inside. So that such a way this terminology is being used. So as a humans, we are the consumers. Consumers of what? Water, food, alcohol, and everything, right? So similarly, producer. As a humans, we are producers. So that means we will implement, sometimes we will generate some instruments or whatever it is. Things we will generate, we will make food or whatever it is. So like that, producers, consumers, it's a regular terminology, what we will see in our day-to-day life. So now with respect to software application point of view, an application which is calling or consuming web services, okay, are called as called as consumer application. So that means in this case, this application is not implemented any REST services in this point of view. It's calling REST services implemented by some other application that you are calling. That is what calling as consumer. Nothing but from where it is calling as consuming REST services, from the nothing but from producer. From the producer. Now can you guess and tell me in this case? Now can I call front end as a producer or consumer, or back end as a producer or consumer? Just think. So now I will say producer as a consumer. Sorry, front end as a consumer application. So this React.js application, what I'm implementing individually with respect to backend integration point of view, front end I'm calling as a consumer application. Why consumer? And backend I'm calling it as a producer application. Producer application. Why backend is a producer application? Because yes, that yeah. Sorry. Are you able to hear me now? Can you confirm me once? I lost my internet. Okay. Okay. Cool. So see here. Now in this case, I'm okay. Cool. So just concentrate. Now in this case, backend I'm calling as a producer application. Why? Yes, backend is the backend application level only. What we are doing, we are creating the REST services, and those REST services are calling by the front end team or front end application. Okay, front end application. So that's why I'm saying like this React application, this front end application as a consumer application, and our backend application as a producer application. So that means in this case, as a developer, backend developer, you should know how to implement the REST services. You should know how to implement the REST services. As a front end developer, you should know how to consume the REST services. Those rules you have to know that. And as a full stack developer, you should know both how to implement, how to consume, how to integrate, whatever it is. So you should know both this. The actual API implementation is happening at backend application level. This is the approach is happening in every software application nowadays with respect to front end and back end point of view. So now backend developers will start implementing the REST services, and then those REST services are called by the front end. So when it comes to requirement point of view, we will discuss together what has to be done from the backend, what has to be done from the front end, what are the things and all. So then based on that, front end team will start whatever the API we created, that they will start integrated from the front end level. Finally, they will exchange the communication. I'll show you, we will see those examples. So this is one scenario, scenario number one. Now, same Swiggy application point of view, I'll take one more scenario. Okay, now overall it is a Swiggy application. Okay, overall it is a Swiggy application. Now, for example, Swiggy application, as per yesterday conversation, what I said, it is calling with respect to payment options. It's integrating with a software application. I'm not sure exactly what it is, payment gateway they are using, but for time being, give me a second. Yeah. Yeah, for time being, so for example, I'm showing you this. So Razor Pay payment gate. So assume you can implement this as part of your applications also. So now what I'm saying is here it is this Razor payment gateway point of view. So same thing is assume Swiggy is using. Now this is a third party application. There is okay. This is a third party application. Now the moment it is using third party application, what Razorpay will do? It will provide some APIs. I think if you open the websites, they will tell you if you want to use your application would like to use Razorpay as part of that, they'll provide you the APIs. They'll provide you the APIs, how to integrate that APIs, REST APIs. They implement a lot of REST APIs, okay, to integrate from your applications. So if you are paying money, then they'll give you the APIs and you can start integrating those APIs from your application. Then you will see this payment, UPI ID, net banking, EMI applications, all these things. For example, Razorpay API documentation. So this is what. See, they are telling. See, if you see this, yeah. What they're asking, Razorpay APIs are completely built on REST APIs. All our responses are written in JSON. Now imagine guys, how important REST services and how important JSON is. Whatever I told yesterday, how people are following. Now you observed the Razorpay gateway in so many applications, right? It's being used by thousands of applications and it is being used in so many countries also they are saying. Now finally what they are doing, they provided REST services. So they are giving basic APIs, how to integrate and all. So you can go with that. So something like they're given gateway URLs or whatever it is. Finally, what it is, APIs, how to authenticate APIs, all these things information. So what you come to know that in this case is they are providing APIs. Once you are paying the amount, they will give. See this one, payment ID. So this is the JSON request body. So you will understand this is what we are implementing. We are also going to implement. This is what we are going to do that. See Java level. That's what you have to do. Python, PHP, Ruby, Node.js, .NET. That's what I am telling you. The advantage of web services, the advantage of REST services is all about you can make the collaboration between different technology applications also. So that means tomorrow you have a Java application, you have a Python application. These two has to be communicated. Yes, you can do that via REST APIs. That is what the point here it is. Now who knows Razorpay implemented on which programming language do you know? We don't know. Swiggy we are implementing the Spring Boot, for example. But Razorpay I don't know. Maybe they implemented on the Python. Assume just like that. They implemented on the Python. Now finally you are making the communication. How you are making the communication via REST services. So REST services is a common okay gesture or common concept or common data exchange in between any programming languages applications and all which supports HTTP protocol. So here you are achieving the you are making again REST API communication. REST API communication. Now what is the point I would like to ask you here it is. Now this is what Razorpay, right? Razorpay, whatever it is. Okay. So this is a Razorpay application. This is a Swiggy application. Now in this case, Swiggy calling Razorpay applications. Overall Swiggy application. See, individually front and back end point of view, okay. Now in this case, with respect to application 1 is Swiggy, application 2 is Razorpay. So in this case, Swiggy is a consumer or producer and Razorpay is a consumer or producer. So in this case, Swiggy is a consumer, Razorpay is a producer. Why? Yes, that's what we are calling Razorpay APIs. We are integrating Razorpay API applications, APIs from the Swiggy to utilize the Razorpay functionalities. So we are a Razorpay providing APIs. So it provided API. That's what the documentation I shown you. See, they are giving some basic examples also here. How examples. So how their REST APIs are looks like and all. They are explaining all this. See, this is a very important guys. I think you can, if you anyone real time people knows all these values. So refer this API documents. It's a better. It's not about Razorpay. This link I've given to you. The see this HTTP status codes I'm going to teach you, and these methods I'm teaching you, and I'm going to teach you what is bad request, what is error. See very clearly they given documentation. Okay, so what is a post put? At what time we have to take this? These are all guidelines as I'll tell you. Okay, they are also explaining same thing here. It is. So what is the REST APIs? They given C. So that's what, as a developer, please start exploring the things. They given definition. Cool. REST API is an architectural style. See, I accidentally opened it, but whatever we discussed is the same thing. An architectural style or design pattern of APIs. When a client request is made through a RESTful API, it transfers representation of the state of the requested resource, web services. It's all same thing, whatever we discussed yesterday. Okay, so anyway, we'll see that. So this is how, now in this case, my point here it is, Razorpay will become producer. Why? We are using Razorpay APIs in the Swiggy. That's why. Now in this case again, Razorpay application is communicating with ICICI applications, SBI applications, and as well as some other banks are now. Okay, bank 1, bank 2, bank 3, like that, etc. 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 Bank 1. Okay, I'll take directly names. ICICI, HDFC, all these applications. Okay, something like UPI payments, credit card, debit card, whatever it is. Now in this case, again, with respect to Razorpay payment point of view, they are they are communicating with ICSI. So what I can say in this case, again, give me a second. Okay. So now in this case, Razorpay is communicating with this software application, ICICI web application, HDFC application, all these things. So how they are communicating is probably REST only. Okay, REST, assume as a REST. So now in this case, again, these applications will become, okay, this bank applications will become what? Producers. Producers to with respect to what? Razorpay point of view. So in this case, Razorpay became consumer. With respect to this interaction, with respect to this interaction, Razorpay is a consumer. Okay, these banking applications are producers. One software application can communicate with any number of other applications, guys. Simple, call their APIs, that's all. So even you can start taking YouTube APIs, all these things also you can integrate. So everything, Google APIs, all these things. So nowadays, every most of the programming language, I mean, most of the applications, when they want to expose these features to other applications, they will create APIs and they will share it with us. Simply we have to call those APIs. Okay. So now in this case, sometimes an application is behaving as a producer, sometimes as a consumer. So that means simple, guys. So what you have to understand here it is, an application is calling other application APIs, then your application is called as consumer. Someone else is calling your application services in the same point of view, then your application is acting as a producer also. So that means I am the person, sometimes my services are called by someone else and sometimes I am calling some other services. Then your application is acting as a producer, acting as a consumer. But with respect to this standpoint, at the moment requirement point of view, whether you're calling, then your application you have to call it as a consumer and opposite application should be called as a producer. At the moment your application services are being called by someone else, then you have to call it as a your application acting as a producer. So that is how you should not get confusion between producer and consumer. Sometimes an application will become producer and consumer both also. Okay, so that is how you have to do. So in this case what I will do is I will show you guys in future. I'll create Spring Boot application 1. Okay, and I'll create one more Spring Boot application, Spring Boot 2. Two individual Spring Boot applications we will do. And here I will create REST APIs. And I will show you how to call this REST APIs from Spring Boot 1 application. So Spring Boot 2 implemented APIs, right? So now I'll show you how to consume. So you're doing in this case consuming. Spring Boot 1 becoming consuming. So we will see these examples also going further. So why I taken this terminology is, so now first approach is this, first goal is this is what? First agenda is how we are implementing. So you have to be very careful. Front end is always, most of the times they will consume the services which are implemented by the back end. Now we are learning the back end, we are in the Spring Boot. So that's why now what is our responsibility? Implementing the REST services. Implementing the REST services. Now let's start implementing the REST services. Okay, REST. Please refer these documents also. I think these images are having a lot of information. So whenever you are studying, just open this open these diagrams and prepare theory point of view. Theory is important sometimes when you are answering in interview. Not much theory, couple of points at least, along with more practical. So at least this flow diagrams point of view, you can easily do that. That's what my intention. Okay, now let's start. Okay, now with this approach, what we will do first, let's create a front end application. Sorry, backend application. Let's start creating the REST services. Okay, so how to create the REST services? Let's see step by step. Okay, so REST API implementation with Spring Boot. So you can implement REST APIs by using Node.js, Python, .NET. Okay, JAX-RS from the pure Java language. Also, there is a API called as JAX-RS. There is a framework available, JAX-RS, guys. Java provided this library. So by using JAX-RS, you can implement the REST services. By using Quarkus framework, you can implement. By using Spring Boot, you can implement. By using Python and Django, something, whatever it is, Python related, some frameworks will be available. By using that, by using .NET, by using Node.js. So REST APIs you can implement with any of the programming languages nowadays. So in our case, we are learning Spring Boot and we are going through the Spring Boot point of view. Okay, let's see what you have to do step by step. First, project creation. For the first time, first application, I'll give you the steps for project creation. Okay, step number one, create Spring Boot web application. Create Spring Boot web application. Okay, so you know how to create the Spring Boot web application. That's why I written the statement. File, new, Spring Starter project. Okay, so I'll take my application name as Swiggy only. Swiggy services. Swiggy UI, Swiggy services, something like that. Okay, so I taken my application as a Swiggy services. Com dot Swiggy. Okay, something like that. Okay, now what you need in the web application point of view. See, to create REST services by using Spring Boot, you don't have any specific extra dependency to be added. You don't need to add any extra specific one. If you are added Spring Web means automatically you got all features or all libraries related to REST APIs into your project. So what we did in the view layer point of view, view resolver view layer point of view, JSP integration in the Spring Boot point of view, whatever the Spring Web dependency we taken, same thing is available, same thing for the REST also. So by using this, you can implement that view functionalities as well as REST also. Now, why you need JPA to store data into DB? Obviously, backend is the only responsible for the database, right? So backend is only responsible for database interaction. Frontend will never do that. So that's why DB also. So take DB also. Don't okay. And I'm using Oracle, so that's why Oracle driver. And Lombok, it's all about auto generation of setter getter methods. So yeah, next finish. So with this, your project setup is completed, guys. You no need to. So that means you don't need any extra other things when you are using Spring Boot. When you are using Spring Boot. But okay, let's take Spring Boot point of view. Okay, so that means project setup is completed. Point number two, now what you have to do. Okay, so let's go back to our project. Let me close this. Okay, so go back to our project Swiggy services. Now, what is the first step you have to do? Whether your application is getting start to get it started means you have to add the DB properties. What you have to do? You have to add the DB properties. Let me add those DB properties. Okay, so now I'll ask you one question. So do we need to add view resolver in this case? For example, my application architecture is designed like this. My application architecture is completely designed like this. Front end as a separate application, back end as a separate application. There is no point of keeping front end in the back end. So in such case, can I create view resolver under folders? Is it okay? No need, right? Yes, that's all. Because we are not entertaining view layer or front end things, that HTML or whatever it is, we are not entertaining in the back end now. We are not at all entertaining. That's purely headache from the front end. That's a separate application now. We are making it separated from the back end. So there is no point of view resolvers now. There is no point. If you are involving again JSP, all these things somehow, then again you can go with that view resolver concepts, all these things. Okay, so in this case I don't want any view resolver. Okay, database I want for the database operations. Yes, this is okay. This is all about I want to change my Tomcat port number from 80 to 80, and here I'll give my context path also, like Swiggy, whatever it is, Swiggy I'll give. So this is okay. So database details also I given. Now let's start your application and see. Obviously it will start. We know that we did lot of times. Okay, so that means with this your project setup is ready, guys. Simply with this project is ready. Now it's time to start implementing the services. Implementing the services. First I will write hello world service. I mean simple service. Then we will take a basic requirement like something like user registration, user login or whatever it is. Then we will implement it. So let's write some. I want to send some hello world message, welcome message. Send, okay, welcome message with the REST services. REST services. So what we have to do? Let's go here. Step by step I'll give you. Okay. So to create that, what you have to do is create a controller class. Create a controller class. So that means to implement the REST services, what you have to do, guys, first step is again creating a controller class. Okay, let's go and create a controller class, new class. So don't disturb this base package. If you created any package name, that's a fundamental rule from day one onwards in the Spring Boot, guys. Otherwise your classes will not be scanned. So I'm writing my package name as controller, and I'm writing my class as something like mm, home controller or whatever it is, some message controller, messages, something. I want, yeah, control. Okay. So in this case, home controller I written. So can I call, how to make it as a controller class? This is the controller class. Okay, cool. Fine. Now what is my requirement? Sending welcome to some message, welcome message. So my requirement is welcome to. So whoever is calling the REST services, whoever is calling REST services, they want to see this message. Welcome to REST services. Okay. So by Dilip IT or whatever it is, something like that. This is what the message I want to send it now. So what you have to do is step number 2. Create create a request mapping method. Create a request mapping method. Create a request mapping method. So that means first of all, what is this response you're expecting? A string message. It's just like a string, right? So let's write a method first, and you know how to write on the request mapping method now. Public. So I'm taking as a string. Here small deviation will come from your previous examples. I'll tell you that. Okay, so welcome message sent, welcome message. You can write any method names. Okay, I'm writing meaningful method names, but you can write anything. So return, I'll keep null and I'll replace this what happens under. Okay, now how to write request mapping method? You know that request mapping method. So in this case, I'm writing again path equal to. So this is a REST API. I'm implementing REST API only. So here my path is slash welcome. So whenever localhost 8899 slash swiggy slash welcome, I send with respect to method get with respect to get method request method dot get, then this REST service has to be executed. This is the method has to be executed. But here, if I given this message, so what will happen, guys? Now, can you guess with your previous knowledge and tell me? Now, for example, let me start it. So now controller class I written, request mapping I written, okay, and then as it is, if you understanding or not from our view layer point of view, what as it is we written. Now how to share this message back to the front end level? Now I don't have any JSP files so that I can add this message to JSP, then JSP will display this message. This message should go as it is to the front end or to the client, whoever is calling this REST services. What you have to do. So let's restart the service. Yeah, let's restart our service again because we made a code change, right? Yeah, it will give not found. What not found? You given a string value. Immediately what it will look for? View name. Immediately it will look for view name with this name, but we are not added any view layer as of now. We are not added any view layer as of now. Let's see here localhost 8888888889. So Swiggy this time slash welcome. So you know how to form the URL. So it's a common context path plus endpoint. So how to form the URL? Localhost, port number. If you have any context path, okay, like that. So localhost port number slash context path slash endpoint path, URL path, URI path. So say based on that localhost port number is 8899, context path Swiggy, and endpoint path is URI path is in this case what? This one, welcome slash welcome. So that is it. Okay, let's take this URI and send it. So same style like what we sent. Now what happened? It is saying like 404 not found. Unexpected. So it is saying like simply same story. What is happening in this case is it is looking for the view name with this name, but we don't have any view layer. We are not added it first of all. Then how we are making this as a REST service is in this case. So whenever you want to created a controller class with @controller annotation, okay, then what you have to do is an annotation add an annotation response body at the rate response body at request mapping method level. So what is the point I said? You have to add this annotation response body at request mapping method level. So if you go here, what is the request mapping method? This one. So what I'm saying, yes, add at the rate request body. So if you see, sorry, not response body, not request body. So in this case, I don't have any incoming request. I'm just sending only URL as of now. I'm just sending only URL from the front end. I'm not sending any Dilip Singh, gender, male, like that. I'm not sending any information as of now. Tomorrow, based on the requirement, what will happen? You will have data, like you will have first name, last name, gender, username, password, and clicking on submit point of view, front end point of view, what it will come up with some data like first name Dilip, last name, gender male, username Dilip123, like that. It some data will come to the backend. But as of now, we don't have any backend. I mean any data in this requirement. We have only URL. So I'm expecting this as a response. So that's why what I said in the request mapping method level, you have to add an annotation called as response body annotation. It is from the framework, okay, package called as spring framework.web.bind.annotation. So annotation that indicates, I'll tell you what is the meaning of it is. So response body is the annotation, and from which package I'll take that. Yeah, this is the package. So this is the package. Now what exactly the response body annotation? They are giving the document. Let's see, and I'll explain in our terminology. So let's take their version, what they are trying to tell, and I'll give you simplified format. So what is the point they are trying to explain is annotation that indicates a method return value should be bounded to the web response body, supported for annotated handler methods. What is the meaning of handler method means? Handler methods, this means, this is what guys, request mapping methods. I said, right, create a request mapping method is nothing but handler methods. Request mapping methods is called as handler mapping methods. So what they are trying to say is the value what we are returning of a method is always added to the response body level. Now if you are adding this means, now it is, now what in this case, okay, let's take like this. In this case, what will happen here, it is the moment you added response body, the moment you are not added response body, okay, added response body without response body. So in this case, how Spring Framework is behaving is internally, whenever you send a request like this, one small annotation difference. Okay, here also same thing, here also URL is same. This we know that. Okay, so in this case, what Spring will do is Spring web module, when it came, okay, the request came here and it started executing the methods, all the logic is executed. Finally, when you are returning the data, what it will observe is this guy added any response body annotation or not added. So then what it will observe is, in this scenario, it will consider, it will look for the view names, it will look for the view name and model and view point of view. It will look for view name and it will try to contact view resolver. So the view resolver or view name functionality coming into the picture. That's why in earlier case you got this message. Why? Because first of all, we don't have any view name with this name and we are not at all involved any view resolver in this case. So that's why what you got 404 not found, type not found. So that means simply it is saying like our web module is saying, hey man, there is no JSP with this file name, there is no view with this file name, something like that it is saying. But our point of view, we are not involving view resolver. Now, the moment you added this annotation, whenever you sent a request now, okay, again this method will execute. Once this service layer and everything is executed, then by the time it is returning the value, what it will understand is, okay, this time developer added response body. So what it will do is, it will take this return value, okay, and it will be added to the response body level. So response object level. So you know, right, HTTP response object. When you are working in the servlets, HTTP servlet request, HTTP servlet response. Generally, what is the response object? Whatever you added to the response object, that will go to the client. That will go to the whoever is triggered the request. For them, this response object will be go back. Now, in this case, you sent request. You request. You sent a request, and that request reached to this method executed, and because of this response body annotation, one extra annotation you added, then what it is doing, it's not at all looking for view or view resolver, simply taking this return, whatever you are returning the result, today it is a string or integer value or student object or list of string objects, whatever it is, blindly whatever the return value you are returning, whatever the result you are returning, whatever you are returning, it will add to the response object level. And what will happen ultimately once the request is executed, in earlier case what happened, if view is existed view resolver point of view, then that view name, then it is added to the response layer. In case view existed all these things, then that is added to the response along with the JSP execution point of view, then response body level the things will add it. But now in this case there is no view resolver, blindly it will take this result return result and add it to the response object and sending back to the client, so whoever is send the request. Now what will happen? This is a plain text you are sending. Automatically it will display as it is. See here. Okay, did I started application? Okay, I forgot to save the changes. Star mark. Save Control S. That's what one more problem. Okay, let me restart my application one more time. I made the change, but I did not. But anyway, you got 404 because still it is looking for view name. Now let's send the request one more time. What happened? You got the message as it is. So so you sent a request and you got a response. Finally, finally you got a response at browser level. So this one annotation, now I can call it as a REST endpoint. I cannot call it as a REST endpoint. This is not a REST endpoint. This is a REST endpoint. So same controller class and you added response body annotation and now your class became as a REST endpoint. So now this is REST endpoint. Oh, it's a basic example. I'm not saying like we are done. So that means going further, what you have to understand, guys, the fundamental rule from this is when you want to make a request mapping method or handler method as REST endpoint or REST service or REST endpoint. That's what I told you. People will call simply as a REST endpoint, REST endpoint like that. Okay. So method as a REST endpoint, we have to add at the rate response body annotation inside at the rate controller class, at the rate controller class. This is mandatory. If you are adding a controller class and then if you want to make sure a service has a REST API, then you have to add it as a response body annotation. You have to add it. Now, can you tell me, for example, I have a view layer also. I added view resolver, something like message.jsp and all. Now I have a welcome.jsp file. Okay, and then I'm sending like welcome slash message or send hello message, whatever it is. Okay, so now in this case, what will happen, guys? It's not an API. It's not a REST API, REST endpoint. How I am saying like it's not a REST endpoint? because there is no response. In this case, it will look for view resolver. So if you are added view resolver, it's okay. You can add view resolver, and then if you added that prefix and this folder path and JX, and then you added like in previous project, like you added, right, web app folder, web app and ANF, and you added this message.jsp or welcome.jsp, then it will invoke that message.jsp. You can try that. Okay. That means in the same controller class, yeah, in the same controller class, what I did right now, I implemented one as a REST service, one as a just like integrated view layer service point of view. But it's not a REST service. This is a REST service. So this is a response body. Now, if you want to see here, okay, I'm writing hello. So what will happen? Let's restart our application. So whenever you made a change, you have to restart it. I'll show you some shortcut to avoid this restart also. Not shortcut. Spring Boot only given that shortcut. I'll tell you what it is. Okay, so I restarted, right? Now let's send the request as slash hello. Again, what you will get 404. Or it is looking for same thing, hello message point of view. It is saying what? View path hello, dispatching back to the current handler, something like that. Again, check your view resolver setup. It is saying let's check your view resolver setup. It is not there. So that's what we are not done. If you are there, then hello.jsp will be invoked like that. So you can do that. But our agenda in this case is we are not at all involving any view layer. So simply completely backend only REST services point of view. So now if I want to send this a hello message again, see if I am adding again rest at the rate response body to this annotation, what's happening? Now this became a REST service. Now what will happen? In this case, the moment this method is executed, whenever you are returning a statement, the text is added to the response object and it is sending back to the client. Now what it will display in the browser level, guess hello will be displayed as it is. The same text as it is will be displayed. Yeah, go and execute. See now what happened, hello came here. So now it is considering as a REST API. Now it's considering as a REST API because you added annotation response body. So you got the difference now. If you are not adding response body, what will happen? If you are adding response body, what will happen? With respect to controller class, you got the difference, right? Now see, I am doing one more scenario here. It is new. I'm writing one more controller class and I'm writing something like user controller, whatever it is, user controller. Okay, cool. Controller class only. Now I'm introducing a new controller class called as REST controller. Okay, REST controller and public string add user. Okay, return user added something. I'm writing some string message only finally. Okay, and I'm writing at the rate request mapping method only, path equal to slash add user, something whatever it is, and comma method equal to get. So for time being get only. Okay, same thing, only just URL pattern is changing, welcome place add user, just message is changing, but ultimately endpoint. But what is the small thing I did here? It is in the second controller class I added a new annotation called as REST controller annotation. So this is the one of the top most interview question people will ask you. What is the difference between REST controller and controller? So many people will say answer in a shortcut point of view, but when I'm asking individually what's happened with controller, I'll come back to that scenario. That scenario, so many people are not able to answer it. Let's see it first of all. Now, what I did in the user controller, REST controller, request mapping, same as it is. Just only thing is URL pattern is changing and some messages I added. Now, if you observe here, I did not added any, okay, not added response body. I'm not added any response body. Okay, cool. So now still I'm done doing this, and let's send the request to this now. Okay, restart it. Okay, your application is started successfully. Cool. Now send the request for slash add user. Okay, I'm sending Swiggy slash add slash user. See what you got. User added successfully. User added successfully. So you got what? User added successfully. How it is possible? You are not added response body. Okay, but still you are seeing this message as it is on the client level. So that means now it is working as a REST service. Now this is working as a REST service. So what happened in this case? Why this? What this special annotation is doing in this case is, on a shortcut point of view, what people used to, I mean, what is the intention of in this case is REST controller equal to @controller plus response body. So if you are using REST controller on the class level, generally we will use this at class level. So nothing but automatically what will happen here it is internally at class level okay, class level this is added internally, as well as internally at every endpoint method level, at every handler method level, this is also added. This is also added. So what happened internally, this annotation is working as, now it means internally added @controller on this class level as well as in this method level. Response body annotation is also presented. We no need to add as a developer. It's already presented. Why? You taken REST controller annotation. If you taken again @controller annotation, then again you have to add response body. It will become REST service. If you added REST controller, okay, and then there is no response body, but nothing but you add, okay, internally it is taking care. That is how it is implemented, this annotation. Now I'll ask you one question in this case. The question is, okay, the shortcut point of view, okay. Now my point is, a controller class is responsible for both REST services and view layer, view resolver endpoints. Then which one I have to choose? Controller or REST controller? So what I have to choose in this case? Yes, controller we have to take in this case. Why? Now by using controller, you can implement REST services as well as view resolver endpoints also. If you want a REST service, add response body and implement it as a REST service. If you want view resolver endpoint, no need to add response body, then it will comes under the view resolver. But when it comes to REST controller, what is the point I said? At every method level, response body is added. That means by default, every method is considering as a REST service only. REST service only. Now, it's all your requirement point of view. You have to choose either controller or REST controller. Now, what is my requirement in this case? I said 100% backend is having only backend. There is no way of view resolver or view layer. There is no front end, 0% UI. So now tomorrow when I'm working, I'm creating, assume I'm creating for 20 controller classes. 20 controller classes. Okay, for a scenario I'm taking. 20 controller classes I'm taking. Okay, same Swiggy application point of view. The use case is like this: 20 controller classes, and out of 20 controller classes, assume I got overall 500 API services. 500 API services. So 500 API services means 500 handler mapping methods. Assume like 500 handler mapping methods. 500 handler mapping methods. So the moment you got 500 handler mapping methods, then if you are going with at the rate controller approach, okay. Now tell me what is the drawback in drawback means okay, it will work functionality wise, it will work. What you can save in this case? 500 times at every method level you have to write at the rate response body. Mandatorily you have to write it. You know that your application is 100% writing only REST services. All 500 are REST services. There is no view resolver endpoints and all. And still you are going with controller on every and okay method level you have to add response body. But if you take an REST controller, that means what guys? You can write start eliminating the writing at the rate response body. Because that annotation itself taking care of every method as a response body annotation. This annotation, this controller class level. So you can start eliminating. That means you are writing 0 times. So that's what. If your requirement is remaining a controller, sometimes maybe one of the controller should have view resolver endpoints as well as REST APIs. Then you have to go controller only for that specific class. And then whatever the methods you are feeling like view resolver endpoint, don't add the response body. Whatever you are considering as a REST API, add the response body. You are clear with this point? How to choose controller versus REST controller, guys? This is what they. That's why they will ask in interviews what is the difference between controller and REST controller. Then you should tell like controller, REST controller is acting as a controller, and as well as internally at every handler mapping method level, by default response bodies annotation is adding internally. So as a developer, we don't need to add response body so that it will consider as a REST API. And to implement all methods, handler methods as a REST services in a controller class, then it's better to go with REST controller. When you are feeling like some of as based on the requirement, couple of them as REST APIs, couple of them as a view resolver endpoints, then it's better to go with at the rate controller so that we have a customization in this case. Few methods as REST services, few methods as a view resolver endpoint point of view. If are all view resolver, all are REST APIs, then it's better to go with at the rate REST controller. But by using at the rate REST controller, can you create view resolver methods? No, it's not possible. It's not possible because by default it is considering, even though you are returning hello, what it is doing, it is considering as a that plain text also as a hello only. It's considering simply as a response body. That's all. It is not at all worrying about nowhere it is involving view resolver. It's not at all involving view resolver, whether you added annotation or not. Because internal it is added with response body. But internally added because of at the rate rest controller. So now that means from tomorrow onwards, when I'm talking about REST controller, I can directly write my controller class and I will use this annotation and I will not mention response body. Is it okay? You got the point now. What is the shortcut annotation? How see Spring Boot thought all these ideas and they are making developer life easy. Ultimately, you can go with controller and response body. That is only okay. That is also solution. This is also a solution. That is what these guys are making our life very easy with shortcut annotations also. Even for this also you have a shortcut annotation. I'll come back to that. So you guys are clear now how to create a REST controller class now. What is a controller versus difference and REST controller? Okay. So going further, I'll create REST controller. That means internally you have to remember all these details. So blindly, because our requirement is what? 0% UI. There is no view resolver endpoints. 100%. Then why you have to write controller and response body unnecessarily? Let's go with shortcut annotation. So REST controller. That is the scenario you have to remember. Okay, cool. Okay, so that means what we understood today is what you understood as of now today is how to create a Spring Boot web application, and internally when you want to make a handler method as a REST API method via controller class, what you have to do, or by using a REST controller point of view, what you have to do, and that too we written only string values as of now. I'll involve slowly list of string values, user objects. Then you should know about JSON. I'll come back to that area slowly, step by step point of view. Now in this case, okay, leave about REST API for some time. Spring Boot, okay, this is not whatever the concept I'm taking now, next 5 minutes or 10 minutes, is now nowhere related to REST services, out of the box of REST services and future of Spring Boot framework. Future of Spring Boot framework. Okay, okay, tomorrow onwards we will implement again REST services only. My point is, for example, I'm updating, hello, Dilip, welcome, something like that. I modified what, some logic I modified. Or else I added some sysout also here, something like sysout in add user method. Now to execute the latest logic, okay, to execute the latest logic, like last 1 week classes, whenever we implemented user management classes, JSP point of view, or right now also, the moment we are added any code changes, or if you are added any small changes, to reflect these changes, what you are doing guys, for example, now whenever you are sending request to add user, you have to see hello Dilip, welcome, but still it is saying, see, user added successfully. That means my latest message, latest code changes are not deployed on the Tomcat server, not reflecting the latest code changes. For that, what you are doing, we are doing the restart. The moment you made any code changes, as a developer, what you are doing, you are going back here, you are restarting your application. That means stop and start. Now again you are sending the request, then you are seeing the latest message. Now after some time I added one more method. I want to test my method. So add user, delete user. So user deleted successfully. So in delete user method. So I added new endpoint, new REST service. Now I want to test, is it working or not? Is it working or not? Okay, then what you will do guys? Again, you have to restart your application. Or else, see delete user. Delete user. What's happening? It's saying like not found. But I added. Why it's not reflecting? Because you are not restarted the server. Now I restarted my server. So that means what is the challenge in the for the developer in this case? When you are creating Spring Web application, Spring Boot web application, leave about the REST services, guys. Okay, it's not the topic what I'm explaining. So what is the challenge? When you make a small code change, immediately to reflect that change, you have to restart your application. So that means the problem, the challenge here it is, our problem by default is we have to restart application for loading recent changes, latest changes, whatever it is. Every time you have to restart. That is the challenge. So as a developer, this is one of the headache. Now what develop in this case Spring Boot thought is, Spring Boot came up with an idea called as Spring Boot framework. Okay, this is the advantage of Spring Boot when comparing with Spring. So Spring Boot came up with a concept called as DevTools. DevTools, DevTools. So DevTools means developer tools. Developer tools. So now add this starter. You know what is a starter? Nothing but I can call it as a dependency also. Dependency to our Spring Web application, or I mean Spring Boot application. Spring Boot application. So what you have to do, identify the developer tools starter, add it to our Spring Boot application. So while creating the project, okay. So if you see here, generally what you will do while creating the project itself, Swiggy services 2 or whatever it is. Next, as of now, what we did, we taken Oracle driver Spring Data JPA, right? And here, if you observe here, developer tools, expand it, you can see, yeah, this one, Spring Boot DevTools. Okay, Spring Boot DevTools. So now I added what? Spring Boot DevTools also. Just that's all. Next, finish it. Okay. So go back to this application now. Go to pom.xml. If you observe here, along with JPA's web module, JPA web starter, DevTools also added. A DevTools starter is added. A dependency DevTools is added. If you observe Spring Boot DevTools. Okay. So now in existing project, what you can do is you can copy paste into existing projects. Now our project is existing project, right? So what I'm doing, pom.xml level, I'm going. I'm adding it dependency. You can get it from the Google also. So simply go to the Google and ask like Spring. For example, you forgot to add it and you are already written a lot of code. Okay, then you want to add in the middle means Spring Boot, DevTools, Maven dependency. That's all. So then it will give you the details. So 3.4.1, we are using that one, right? So just copy this. That's all. Copy this dependency and add in the pom.xml. Now what I did same in the Swiggy services. I copy pasted from there in the from the new project what I have created. Now new project at services 2 is already have DevTools. Services 1 is not having, right? So I copy pasted. I added dependency into this now. Now see the beauty of advantage. So okay. So now what I'm trying to say here it is I'm deleting Spring Boot services 2. I'll show you from tomorrow onwards. Again, I'll take DevTools. From tomorrow onwards, I'll take the DevTools. You are not done anything, guys. You just added dependency. That's what dependency you added means. This is the dependency you added in the pom.xml. So this is the dependency you added. That's all you are done. You are not done anything. Now see the magic of this starter. Okay. Now let's start our application again. Cool. Okay, so yes, cool. It started, right? Now the advantage of this is, okay, now you can execute your logic and everything. Let's go to the user controller or home, whatever it is. Okay, now I'm sending request to delete user. Okay, fine. Go back here, delete user. See, now you got message, right? Now you will see the advantage. So now you felt like delete user deleted. You are adding successfully is the word. One small change you added. So earlier, whenever you added this, after saving this, what you are doing is you are restarting your application manually as a developer. But if you observe here what's happening, automatically restarted. So you observed or not, it is automatically restarted. Now onwards, the moment you made any code change, you no need to go here, start, restart, no need to do that. Now DevTools is taking care of that. So that means the moment you added any line and you did Control S, that means save operation. So now, for example, I added here welcome to Dilip IT. Okay. So I'm clicking on Control S. Control S. So if you observe here below, automatically restarted. Now go back and execute add user. See, I'm seeing latest message now. So that is the advantage of DevTools. Very small, but it will reduce lot of restarts. Now that means you no need to restart one time also manually. The moment you started for the first time, later onwards, you can start concentrating on your code changes. The moment you added any new REST service, okay, whenever you want to make it as a testing like update user updated successfully in update method, and I'm writing like update user. So usually what you have to do once you are making control s, restart it. But see, automatically doing. You are not doing anything. As a developer, you don't need to concentration on restarts now. Just test it. you got updated successfully, something like that. So this is the advantage of DevTools. Very small one, and you are not doing anything. Just add this dependency and leave it. It will take care of restarts when you are making the code changes. So this is the advantage of Spring versus Spring Boot point of view. And when you are asking what is the difference between Spring and Spring Boot, one of them is integrated Tomcat server. Okay, that is the biggest advantage. Second one is they are providing dev tools also. Similarly, you have actuators also. I mean, so the actuator purpose is different. I'll explain that later. For that, you have to know REST services. So like that, lot of new advantages available in the Spring Boot when comparing with Spring. Okay, let's do one thing. For example, in the same material, if anyone is interested to create Spring web applications, not Spring Boot, okay, like view resolver or whatever we are implementing REST services in the Spring framework point of view. In the Spring framework point of view. Hmm, I think I have added in this material itself one small example. If anyone is interested, you can try that. That's what my point here, right? JPA and Spring JPA. If it is not there, I will add it. I think I added, I remember. So if you are interested, just go with those steps, and then you will realize what is the real difference between Spring and Spring Boot. Yeah, I think after this it will come. Yeah, so probably I have added how to make things in the Spring. I'm not sure. This is all Spring Boot only. Okay, view resolvers. Okay, service layer in Spring MVC. Okay, this is also, you know, that repository layers, we know that. Yeah, Spring Boot MVC JSP. Yeah, this is what we created. DevTools and all. Today we created. Yeah, this is what we created today. DevTools and all. Then okay, tomorrow we'll see that REST services point of view. Okay, this is we are already completed. Sorry, this is not REST services. Last week we completed. Now REST services point of view, we will do that. Yeah, this is what I will discuss. HTTP methods and all. JSON. These are all we are discussing now. REST controller, what is REST controller and everything. If not there, I'll add it. I'll add it. One Spring example. Or else let's do one thing. I have ready with me also. Spring material. I'll show you the pain what you will feel in the Spring framework point of view. That's what my point here it is. Spring JDBC module, Spring Web module. Yeah. So see here, for example, whatever you created today, like REST services point of view, what you have to do in Spring, observe the steps. First, you have to create a regular web application, like how you created for the servlets point of view. Okay. Point number one. And then you have to make it as a Maven project. Point number two. And then as a developer, you have to add all these dependencies. What dependency, MVC jar file, and which Spring version you want. And inside that, you need a servlet jar file also mandatorily. Okay, and then This some with something like MVC configuration extends web MVC configuration, some default one time work you have to do. See, this is all project setup. Whatever I'm showing here, step number 1, 2, 3, 4 is all about a project setup, not yet implementation of the requirement. Still, you have to do dispatcher servlet configuration also, something like that. You have to do all these configurations. I explained you what exactly you are doing, all these things and all. So now see, yeah, until this, all these steps you did project setup. Now imagine how much time it will take. Minimum 10, 15 minutes or 20 minutes of time. Only with respect to write this welcome point of view. Okay. But if I taken same thing in the Spring Boot, all are ready made. And point number one, that is one thing. Second thing is adding the Tomcat server. Not only Tomcat server, one of the server you have to download, you have to install in your computer, and you have to add it into your what your Eclipse level, and then you will start deploying that application into Tomcat server. So run as Tomcat server, run on Tomcat server, like that, then you are able to see that. Now in this overall process, when comparing with Spring Boot is eliminating this server configuration. Eliminating means what it is doing, it is came up with internal integrated Tomcat server. The moment you created application, internally it will have its own Tomcat server. And it's eliminated all these steps. Eliminated means they are taking care of internally. This basic steps, configuration and all, they are taking care of internally. That's what auto configuration. Spring Boot is providing auto configuration means the moment you added web module to your project, internally automatically all this, okay, dispatcher servlet configuration, request should go to where, URL mapping, all the requests. So what is the point I said you right? Every request should go via dispatcher servlet. Slash represents all requests. All requests should go to dispatcher servlet. Like that, you are making some manual configuration in the Spring framework. But now these are all abstracted. Abstracted means you know that hiding the implementation, showing the features, right? So in an abstraction point of view, these are all details. This Maven file generation, all these things, they got abstracted, and simply they are showing the features, and we are using that Spring Initializer portal, and we are creating our Spring applications rapidly with the help of Spring Boot framework. So finally, Spring Boot is a framework is helping you to implement Spring applications very quickly. Internally, Spring Boot is by using Spring Boot, we are implementing Spring application only. But in Spring, you have to do things lot of manually. Those are all automated by using Spring Boot. So that means by using Spring Boot, we are developing Spring applications rapidly. These are all examples, differences you have to explain in the interviews, guys. They will ask you what is the difference between Spring and Spring Boot. So then you should explain all these things. Then you should explain about all these things. So Spring Boot point of view, official document will also say the same thing. Spring Boot makes it easy to create standalone Spring based applications. By using Spring Boot, finally you are creating Spring applications only. But Spring Boot is making lot of things like now understand the advantages of Spring Boot, what they are saying, standalone applications. Yes, obviously, right? You are just creating just like a regular core Java application point of view. Even though it is the biggest web application, see, now for example, tomorrow when you want to send hello world from the servlet, you have to do lot of steps. But Spring Boot point of view, within 1 minute you are able to write hello world. But if it is servlet also, you have to spend a lot of time. Embedded Tomcat, now you know that. Embedded Tomcat, integrated Tomcat, starter dependencies. Yes, you are not doing anything. Simply when you want by default from the initializer you are doing, or you just added this starters, remaining all and all it is taking care internally. So automatically configuring third party libraries. I'll explain this. What is the third party libraries automatically configured? When I'm explaining about JSON data mapping, right? Then I will explain what is the third party. See, I said JSON is the data format we will take in the REST API implementation. To support the JSON data, we need JAX and jar files. I'll come back to that point. Then you will come to know that this point. What is the meaning of third party libraries? So see here production ready features such as metrics, health checks. Health checks means that one actuator I said, right? By using actuator you can do that. Absolutely no code generation and no requirement of XML configuration. Yes, it is saying like you're not at all involving anywhere else XML configuration. These are all the features. Now practically you know all the points. We know Tomcat server, we know starter dependencies, we know third-party libraries. Maybe day after tomorrow I'll explain. So these are all differences. These are all extra features rather than okay on top of Spring Framework. So you should understand such a way Spring versus Spring Framework point of view. Okay, so just if you are interested, try to create a hello world example on the Spring. Then you will feel like how much time you are saving with this Spring Boot to say same hello world. It's if you are interested, do that. Okay, so that's all for today. What I will do tomorrow, same REST services only, continuation to REST services only. We have to discuss a lot of things. So today I'll suggest you please practice such a way like adding the DevTools also. Write controller class and then response body, and write rest controller, and write without response body, and just try to write this kind of hello world messages, all these methods, and just observe it. So tomorrow on top of this, what is the next point and all, I'll explain you. So what is the next step? We will take a form and all. What is a JSON? I think probably I'll involve JSON tomorrow. So we'll start taking data whenever we are passing data, means we have to pass in the JSON format. So what is a JSON and all? Probably you will see from tomorrow onwards. Okay, don't miss the classes next 1 or 2 weeks. So that's all. Thanks to everyone, guys.